if I can be completely frank. When I first heard we were getting a Borderlands spin-off game, specifically around Tiny Tina, I thought it was going to be a desperate, half-hearted attempt to cash in on one of the most liked and recognizable characters in the Borderlands series, and to try and cash in on the nostalgia, to harken back to what is considered the gold standard of DLC expansions, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon's Keep. That DLC is hands down one of the best experiences Borderlands has ever produced, at a time that seemed like it was virtually unstoppable. I don't think you can ask for a better DLC to actually end your game off. Not only did we get an expansion that provided enough content to be its own standalone game, but it gave us some depth and insight to Tina as a character, how she dealt and coped with grief. If you're there for the characters, the story, or even the gameplay, you'd be hard-pressed to be disappointed. And looking with how companies are doing more and more spin-off games to either properly bridge the gap between the major game releases, or if their intention is much more malicious and frankly lazy, with the idea of just putting something out for the sake of keeping that revenue well from drying up, and also looking at how Gearbox handled Borderlands 3's second DLC season. Again, didn't expect much of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Tina would return at the head of yet another Bunkers and Badasses game modeled after Dungeons and Dragons. We'll get some new locations, maybe the return of Handsome Jack for the 100th time as the enemy or some kind of side character or quest giver, some B&B inspired loot, and that was it. On to the next thing. However, what we got was not that at all.
Fine, you know what? You wanted a fight? I'll give you a fight!
Reviving his whole crew with just one Is this working for you? I want you to take loaded like an absolute.
The Banshee!
This soul goes out for you!
Let's be honest for a second. We all know of a person, whether it be a relative or a friend, that didn't show too much promise as a kid. Their hand-eye coordination was a little off. They were not the type of person that had the cognitive ability to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You catch my drift? They're always doing clumsy or stupid shit. Or even doing that, you know, shitting themselves.
Hey, what is that? That god-awful smell.
I don't know. I go poopy.
Did you just say that you went poopy?
Yeah, it was good.
You know, that clumsiness or lack of common sense or inability to properly socialize or be like everyone else has you make the connection that later on in life they will be incapable of immense success. At least they would never surpass you. Then come 5 to 10 years later, you actually run into that person and realize they're better than you in every single way, and you're stuck making YouTube videos in your room alone, about to get evicted. Expectations is a funny thing. And what I was getting at with that very dark, specific analogy goes back to what I said at the beginning. Very, very little expectations for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Yet I, after spending 20 plus hours in this game, am very pleasantly surprised. I would go almost so far to say that this is exactly how a spin-off game should be done. You take everything its predecessor did correctly, bring it over to this game, experiment, innovate a little bit, you remove or correct, if you're being stubborn about it, those aspects that fell short. You know, maybe they didn't hit just right during the execution. Give it a little bit more time to really grow and blossom on players. If not, then fuck it in the next mainline game, then completely axe it. You know, you play around a little bit with what works and what doesn't work with players. What I love to see in these spin-off games too is I consider them half measures. You know, it's supposed to bring over those improvements, quality of life fixes, but also tease you a little bit. You know, get you excited, get your mind reeling with what you can see with the next full-blown game, whatever it is. And for me personally, this did just that. I'll talk more about what I mean here in just a second. Before I get ahead of myself, let me just say this. If you are a fan of Borderlands 3's combat, you will love this game. I recommend you pick this game up. I went from playing Borderlands 3 in its entirety and every single one of its 4 major DLC expansions from its first year season pass. You know, and I was practically climbing out of my seat by the time I was playing Krieg's DLC. I was fucking tired of playing Borderlands. I was over it. I played it 2 weeks straight. I was more committed to it than Tom Brady was to his retirement. And for me, someone that gets incredibly bored very easily, to go from extremely exhausted and tired of the Borderlands experience to be completely reinvested in it all over again, I think speaks volumes. You have quite a bit of enemy variety, from goblins, trolls, cyclopses, mermaids, crabs, mushrooms, and pirates, with many varied locations, and the whole approach to the overworld with the game world being designed like a game board. And in that you have secret encounters, and you can look for shrine pieces that then give you buffs throughout the world. Spells replace explosives. You have classes and many weapons that are all fantasy based. It's very familiar, yet it's different enough to keep it exciting and engaging. They also innovate in some ways that complement this D&D approach, but I also hope that they continue with these concepts or ideas with the next Borderlands game. Borderlands is not only a looter shooter, it is an RPG to a degree, and this is the first time ever that you can actually customize your own character. You can choose your own voice, you can choose your own body type, how tall, how small your character is. You have that ability. You have that sense of freedom and choice over your specific character. I think the next step in something like this would be, yeah, maybe expanding a little bit on the customization, but also maybe having third-person cutscenes where in the next Borderlands game you can see your Vault Hunter and any other Vault Hunter that is in the campaign that you can choose from, whether they're actual characters or just there to push the narrative along. It'd be nice to see that form of interaction in the cutscenes. You know, Borderlands has obviously never done something like that. It does make their story a little bit, I don't want to say disconnected because I feel like that's the wrong word, but considering you're always referred to as Vault Hunter and you never really see your character or the other Vault Hunters in a third-person cutscene interacting with each other, I think something like that would help create a stronger investment with the player. You know, it wouldn't feel so impersonal, for lack of a better word. And while that you could argue that when it comes to Borderlands, the story plays a backseat role compared to the actual gameplay, I think a presentation like that would really help. In a weird way, I also like how your melee weapon is now a new set of gear that you can collect. At the end of the day, I mean, it really just is a melee weapon. I never really used it in any of the Borderlands games or really in any shooters, but the fact that you can actually collect legendaries that then allow you to swing and throw out a vertical slice that then lights enemies on fire, I think was interesting. It allowed me to actually use it a little bit more than I would have in any other Borderlands game, and I would like to see that expanded on in some way. You know, maybe that becomes a viable option of just being able to melee completely. I'm sure you probably can do this if you really wanted to. I was speaking strictly in a casual sense, you know, without delving too deep into a melee based build, if you can even do that right now. But just the fact that that's another layer of customization, another layer of finding gear, and another way to take on your enemies. And while I have seen quite a bit of complaints about how the legendary drop rate is in this game, to be honest with you, I actually really like it. When Borderlands 3 first dropped, if I remember correctly, every other enemy dropped a legendary, and not every single legendary was good. To be honest with you, the majority of them were quite shit. Every legendary I found in this game has been unique, it's been different, and it's been viable. I think my favorite legendary is actually a shotgun. Every time you fire, you immediately have to reload. It takes 6 shotgun bullets per shot, but it rains down arrows and it does a stupid amount of damage. I think it was like 500 times 6, with an additional 350% damage for everything in the radius. Hands down, one of my favorite guns. Lastly, for all of you that don't know, there is no New Game Plus or True or Ultimate Vault Hunter in this game. Rather, what you get at the end of beating the main story is you're introduced to something called Chaos Chambers. These are basically arena runs where you can acquire buffs and debuffs. You get moon orbs for currency, and then at the end of your runs, if you survive through all of it, you're brought to this chamber where you can invest all your moon orbs that you acquired to try your hand at a legendary item, whether it's a specific weapon, melee, shield, ring, or any other specific gear that you're after. Now, you're not guaranteed a legendary, but what's cool about this is I'm still trying to figure out how the hell this really goes, because on some runs at the end, you're presented with the boss fight. It might be the Dragon Lord, it might be a Banshee. Last night I was playing with a friend at the end of the run. We finished off the Dragon Lord, and I thought that was it. But surprisingly, we were given the opportunity to continue our run, which we ended up doing, which then presented us with 2 boss fights that I've never seen before in this game. And I have every side quest, almost every side quest done, and I thought I had every location completely explored. But whether if that was the case or not, these were 2 brand new boss fights, and they were the most intense fights that I've had in this game. To be honest, I wish there was more like this. And again, I wish I knew how the hell I triggered it. But really, with the inclusion of the Chaos Chambers, the Myth Ranks, which give you 4 individual skill trees that you have to invest in clockwise, and each one of those trees have 7 different attributes that you can invest in 10 to 20 times. I mean, there's a lot of in-game content here, and I'm actually very curious to see how they plan the DLC out ahead for the future of this game. But all in all, a great game. I highly recommend Tinytinaswonderlands Wonderlands. As a fan of Borderlands, as a fan of looter shooters, or just an FPS game in general, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. But let me know what you guys think. Have you guys been playing this game? Have you been keeping an eye on it? Are you a fan of Borderlands at all? Would this be your first Borderlands game? I played nearly all of them, and if this is going to be your first one as far as the story goes, I mean, it's all fantasy based. It's completely different from the established lore and ideas and everything that the previous games have set up. So you don't have to worry about being lost or having to play any of the previous games in order to hop into this one. Well, like always, guys, my name is Cynic. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want to add to this conversation, maybe I missed out on something that you want to emphasize, feel free to share that down in the comment section below. I do have a Discord with almost 3,000 members, ranging in a wide variety of games, so if you're looking for people to play with or just talk shit to, then maybe consider checking it out. Special shout out to all my patrons, and a big apology to everyone else for my lack of commitment. I've been stuck dealing with some personal things, but everything is much better now, so we have a nice week or so content ahead of us. But until then, I'll see y'all later.